the journey that you're on may, and in all likelihood, will lead you to something you cannot possibly predict.
Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat of Take the Doughnut, here to help you get inspiration and get donuts. I'm a motivational keynote speaker, and today I am bringing you a very exciting Take the Doughnut interview with John Eisendrath, who, sit tight, this is a little bit about John. He was a showrunner and executive producer for shows such as The Blacklist, Outlaws, and PLAYMAKERS, as well as a writer and executive producer on many shows such as Felicity, Alias, Beverly Hills 90210, an illustrious career. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I will say, I mean, I didn't mention it in that official interview, but we are both Brown University graduates, and that is how I'm connecting to you now. And for those who have followed my journey along the way, you may remember that the first show I ever podcasted about was Felicity with a friend of mine from Brown.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of connection happening here, and I'm quite pleased to be talking with you today. But before we get into any more serious questions, I have to ask, what's your favorite donut?
I would have to say my favorite donut has always been the apple fritter. Maybe a little hybrid, not exactly donut, but sort of donut.
It's classy, it's seasonal, it's good. It's seasonal, but
Well,
it's all the time. That's
it
the
certainly
beautiful
was
part
when
of
I
it.
was growing up.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, I said just a little bit about you just up front, but tell us more about yourself. What should we know about you?
Well, I am someone who started after Brown as a journalist, and I was a journalist for 8 or 9 years and loved being a reporter. And then, for various reasons, decided to try my hand writing screenplays and moved to Los Angeles. And like many people who do what I do, didn't know anybody, had never been to Los Angeles, had quit my job, and just tried my hand at it. And I have been very lucky along the way. It's a great business. Met a lot of great people, including my wife. So you should also know I'm married and have 4 children. And I love writing and have been very lucky to be able to do it all these years.
It's a pretty incredible transition to have as well, starting in journalism and then moving into TV. That seems like a huge pivot with a completely
Uh,
different network.
it was, and when I did it, most people, including my parents, were a little like, "Wait, what are you doing?" But I had, yeah, I think as a reporter, you really do. It's a great place to learn how to write clearly, how to write succinctly, how to write well. And I had also done some magazine writing, which is nonfiction, but has a lot of storytelling elements to it. And I think having done that, where you're trying to tell the story as creatively as possible, did help a great deal. Plus,
Mm.
I always loved TV. I was a huge TV fan my whole life, and so writing for it may have been less difficult because I had always been a fan.
I think when you've seen a lot of TV, you have a better sense of what works and what doesn't in a story, or what somebody watching it might expect. And maybe that helps or hurts. I don't know when you're on the other side.
I did come out here um, inspired by a very particular writer who wrote a very particular type of television show. And so I had a very specific sense of the type of writing that I was hoping I would be able to do. And that did help as well.
Mm. Well, let me reset this for people who were watching who've never seen a Take the Donut interview before, because we've got a strange theme and I've got donuts behind me. So what's going on here? For me, Take the Donut is another way to say carpe diem. It's all about going after the things that you want in life. And it started with this strange thing that happened to me at Brown where I left an actual donut on a table and it became an object lesson for me in what it looks like to leave opportunities behind. So I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take the donut instead of leave it on the table. And so I'll link a video here for those who haven't seen that origin story. But basically, this conversation is all about opportunities in life, going after goals, going after the things we want, and what does that really look like when we try to do it. So here's a question for you to get started with that. How are you with going after goals? What is that process like for you?
Well, I think it is very dependent on your station in life. When I was younger, as I described earlier, I was willing to do anything to take advantage of an opportunity or to go after something that I wanted. So, for instance, I had a perfectly good journalism career, but I didn't feel that it was the life's work that I had initially hoped that it would be. And I had a vague inkling that there was potentially a career in screenwriting, which I only knew of because, as I said, I liked television. I didn't know any screenwriters, and I didn't know any people who lived in Los Angeles. So I felt that it was worth taking the risk. So I upended everything. I had, after college, moved back to Chicago, where I'm from. That was where I was working. That was where everything I knew was my family, my friends, and I left it all. And I left it to move to California, where I'd never been, and to a city that I'd never stepped foot in before the plane landed, with nowhere to stay, no job, and I didn't know anyone. And so I do, and that is what I would recommend for everybody. If you have that sense, however crazy it seems, you should act on it, because had I not acted on it, um, none of what I look back on with such fondness and pride would ever have happened. And it's hard and it's scary, but it's not really as hard and scary once you're doing it as it is in theory. So I am a big believer that you should try and do that. And I say, when you're younger and you wouldn't do it as much, but I'm not sure that's actually true. I think that um, at any point in your life, you should be open to upending the apple cart and trying something new.
This sounds so familiar. I'm loving everything about your story, and you're exactly the right person to talk to for this. So I don't even know that this question needs to be asked, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I always do. When you've got a really big thing that you're going after, you know it's going to take a while. You know there's going to be either a lot of time or a lot of steps involved. What keeps you motivated as you go through that process?
Well, I think that part of it, I'm sure, is fear of failure. I'm sure part of it is the terror of going after something and failing. Though you learn a lot when that happens as well. I think that for me, I tend to be something of a doobie, so like a worker bee. So, my way of going after something is to take it very much one step at a time. So, um, coming out as I did to Los Angeles, not really having written anything before, it was study, read scripts, study how they're written, take it one step at a time, try my hand again, and ignore, the big existential questions of, am I ever going to get a job? Am I ever going to stay employed? Is it going to happen? And just keep burrowing at the little pieces that are building. And I find that that has been very rewarding and helpful over the years. Even in an individual job where I felt in over my head, if I get hired on a show that I really don't understand, or I just don't feel like I'm a good enough writer to work on it, then it's not, oh my God, I panic because I can't do it. I sort of try and just focus, break down what makes the show good, and try and figure out how I can learn and adapt to that. So part of it is just really um, blocking out the really larger questions of, will I or won't I succeed? and just accepting that I'm on the journey. And the only way for me personally to travel along that road is to block it out and take the little steps, the littlest steps along the way in the hopes that it'll eventually get me there.
It's interesting too, because I think the concept of sort of upsetting the apple cart almost forces you into that because you're in a completely different environment, and so having a big goal in mind is almost harder to do. It's easier just to say, what do I need to do just to survive to the next day, or what do I need to do to sort of put a life around me. And so it's interesting that you are moving towards a big goal, but it's not really named. It's really more about the steps along the way. I think it's a different way of visualizing it, but sort of gets you moving in the same direction as somebody who had named the goal.
Well, I do believe that in my mind or I have named the goal, internally. I know what the goal is. But I have, I guess I would say that um, I think being as practical as possible. And again, part of it is I'm filtering it through, the business that I have been in, a business in which you can devote a lot of time and energy to the impractical. I have a huge idea, or I think if we spent $80 million, we could do this, and all things that are true. But okay, what actually would go into making it possible to do any of that? And the answer, again, for me as a writer is, well, I have to write it and I have to break it down to the smallest elements and figure out how to do it and just be as well, two things, practical as possible, and particularly at the beginning, but probably always, never, ever turn your nose up at an opportunity. There are a lot of people in my business. You named some of the shows that I worked on. I've worked on a lot of shows that people would otherwise not have taken. I'll just name a few of them. The first show I ever worked on when I came to Los Angeles was a little health and exercise show called The Body by Jake Show, which had some big, goofy trainer to the stars interviewing B celebrities about how they held ketchup bottles to, make their biceps bigger. And I worked on a show called Models Inc. I worked on a show called Malibu Shores. I worked on shows they were bad shows. They were embarrassing in their own way because they didn't aspire to really anything. But they taught me, you learn something on every project. And if I hadn't done them, then now that I look back on it, I wouldn't have been the next job that became available to me really only became available because I hadn't said no. And I know a lot of people who do say no. A lot of people who think, oh my gosh, that's, beneath them. And that is, and I learned that because I had done that. When I was a reporter, lots of people, when they first start out as a reporter, they go get a job in a small town and they work their way back up to the big city. And at that point in my life, I really wasn't willing to go get a job on the, Manhattan Beach Sentinel or whatever it is, or the Tuscaloosa Times. And the people who did it, I admired them and they rose through the ranks. So when I got to Los Angeles, I said to myself when I was going to do fiction writing, I will take any job. I don't care what it is. And I do believe that that is a very important lesson.
So interesting. Well, so when you talk about going after these huge goals, these huge benchmarks that are in front of you, let's talk about challenges. Challenges come up for all of us. For you, is there a particular brand of challenge that just keeps rearing its head no matter what it is you're working on? Like at whatever you're going after, you can expect to see this Achilles heel turn up.
Well, I think there's two different ones. There's internal and external. So internally, well, can I write well enough? Am I good enough? Am I talented enough? Do I have it in me to do what I'm being asked to do? So that's one part of it, which I think is um, what's hard about that is, when you're in any business, and mine is no exception, it's a collaborative enterprise. And so you're getting a lot of input, particularly if you're a writer, you're basically writing something and showing it to people. And most of the time, those people's one job's to tell you it sucks. And so you have to have a certain amount of confidence in what you're doing to even be willing to put it out there, show your product to other people. And so internally, there was always the obstacle of, can I figure it out? Can I do it? Then externally, there are the obstacles of, they call it show business, not show friendship, because, it is a business and there's a lot of being told no. Any writer, anyone in our business, and because it's piecework, it's not like, well, I don't know what to compare it to. I mean, if you work in a law firm, you'll probably get said no sometimes, but you're on a progression. If you're there for 40 years, it's a little bit different. Ours, it's you work on one show, then another show, you try one project, and all these projects are very perishable. So within 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, people say no. So eventually you have to accept the external obstacles of, can I convince someone to say yes to my idea, to my script, to my show? Can I convince them to say yes when it comes time to renew it? Can I convince them to say yes when I want an actor that they don't want? Can I convince them to say yes about 1,000 things every day? And because and so the external obstacles are endless. When you are, particularly when you're running a TV show, when you are responsible for editing or casting or wardrobe or take your pick. So you're saying, I want that my character to wear this, and someone has an opinion. I want the show to be edited this way. Someone will have an opinion. So you're constantly dealing with external obstacles. And I think the answer to how to deal with both is the same, which is, for better or worse, and in my case, it's sometimes better and sometimes worse, you have to trust yourself. You have to trust that if you have to trust that you are able to hear other people's ideas and incorporate them when you think they make it better, and not be have too much ego to not be able to hear that someone else has a much better idea. And at the same time, you have to trust that you can agree to disagree, and that your way is the way that you feel is best. And you just can't become someone you're not. Because if you become someone you're not to try and get over these obstacles, you will never get over them.
Spoken like a person who's had a mountain of decisions that you've had to negotiate for in every given project you've ever done. You might have been answering this question along the way, but what would you say is the biggest donut you've ever taken? And that could be personal or professional, whatever comes to mind for you.
Well, I mean, I have had plenty of both. I mean, going for it, coming out to Los Angeles in the beginning was obviously a huge life-changing thing. But, I mean, I have gotten divorced and remarried, and I got divorced when I had children. And that is an incredibly painful, difficult journey to go through. And, you cannot go through it lightly. And if you feel like it's um, something you have to do, talk about obstacles. That I think is, being willing to walk through that process, because you believe that for yourself and for your spouse, and especially for your kids, there's actually, a better future on the other side. That I think is an incredibly difficult and, sometimes, well, brave thing to do. Very hard, very hard. And becomes a big part of who you are in your life, and how you identify yourself. And then once you've done it, the work that is required as a single parent to devote yourself to your kids, single mom, or, in my case, single dad, um, to make sure they have love and the best life they could possibly have, or that you can possibly help them get. Uh, Nothing else. I mean, the moving to Los Angeles or whatever else you do in life, nothing comes close to that as the biggest donut you're going to take in your life.
I haven't heard anybody talk about it like that here, and I love that you shared it that way. Um, what's in progress for you if you can talk about something? Is there a donut that you're currently taking?
Well, um, two, both again, personal and professional. So personally, my wife and I are now empty nesters. And so when you face that cliff, you're like, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to sit in the lazy boy and, watch TV all day? Or are you going to like try and rally? And so my wife and I have rallied and left our home in Los Angeles and moved across the country to teach writing. And in doing that, obviously upended, the life that we were familiar with forever. And it has been incredibly invigorating. And again, not quite as risky as moving to LA 40 years ago, but a risk, and different. And that has been amazing. And so I think, again, at any stage in your life, you've got to be willing to upend the apple cart. And, professionally, I'm still very excited about my next project, which talk about external obstacles, took an incredible amount of time to convince anyone to say yes to. I'd say I pitched the idea to, let's say, 15 different networks, streaming services, people who buy your ideas, and 14 of them said no, and only one said yes, but you really can only take one date to the prom. And so that was satisfying. And so I'm excited about that.
Wow, so many things happening for you. It's all changing uh, while the process continues for your next project. So there may be people who are watching this who have a donut of their own they want to take. And maybe it's still just an idea for them, or maybe they've started on the path and they're looking for motivation. So let's sprinkle some encouragement. And what would you say to those people?
Well, is just not to be afraid and never let fear get in the way of the journey you're on and or uncertainty. I always loved uh, the phrase, the quote, the line that Stephen Jobs once used in a commencement address, where he said, to young people that you can never connect the dots of your life going forward. You can only do it when you're older and you look back. And so, whatever that journey is, it may seem like a losing journey, like a one that you're not sure why you're on, that it may not end where you want it to go. Um, but what matters is that you're on it. And I started as a reporter. I ended up as a TV writer. My wife started as a doctor. She ended up as a TV writer. The journey that you're on may, and in all likelihood, will lead you to something you cannot possibly predict. And that in the end, and this is entirely true, the destination is irrelevant. Whether it's you make a fortune or you end up having 20 grandkids and it's amazing, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It is the journey that matters. And you've got to get your head in a place where you can enjoy it. All of the troubles, all of the ups and downs, that is the only thing that matters.
Beautifully said. Have a little bit of grace to give some perspective to the journey that you're on, and you haven't seen the whole thing yet. For those of us who want to follow your journey or who are interested to know more about the next project that you'll be working on, where can we find you? Are there any resources that you want me to put out there for people?
Uh, Gosh.
And the answer to that can be no,
No.
because I was checking and I didn't see a lot for you out there, but if there is anything.
Oh, I feel like when you're in the business I'm in, that my hope, when I mean, if I was working on a show that's in production right now, I'd be like on at 6 o'clock on NBC or net dropping on Netflix. But right now I'm developing it. So if we were talking about this in a year, I might be like, okay. But right now, um, no, I'll
So
mind my
look
own
at your
business.
IMDb page, and maybe then we'll find what's on the horizon. Okay.
That's
Well,
right.
thank you so much for having this conversation. To those who are watching this, if you enjoyed this conversation with John, please feel free to like and subscribe on the video. There's so many inspirational interviews still to come. But John, thank you for taking time and talking with me, for sharing your thoughts about what opportunity has looked like in your life.
Thank you for having me.
And to everybody who's watching this, you know what to do. Go out there, get inspiration, get donuts. Bye, everyone.